Okay, so today we are going to look at major scales. One of the ways I like to look at a major scale is using these solfege circles. And as you look at the different solfege that we know is in a major scale, what do you kind of notice about the relationship between the blue circles? Or how would you describe the relationship between the pitches? As you look at them, you can probably pretty quickly see that most of them are pretty spaced apart, except for right here between the mi and the fa, they kind of overlap, and between the ti and the do, they also overlap, and that's intentional. The distance between mi to fa is what we call a half step, and likewise, we also have a half step from ti to do. Let's look at what that looks like. Here we kind of just see it in a different format. We're using, just the solfege hand signs or the Kerwin hand signs, excuse me, to locate, this is the scale and this is the half steps between mi to fa and also from ti to do. And those hand signs also kind of implicate that those half step relationships as well. That distance between mi to fa, that fa kind of points and leads us back down to mi, or ti is kind of pointing and leading us up to do, that half step there again. Another easy way to see the relationship between half steps and whole steps in a scale is through the keyboard. So right now I have a blue dot on the note C. If I wanted to go a half step above it, it's just the next pitch directly above it, which in this case happens to be a black key. So the relationship between those two pitches would be a half step. I can find another pitch on the scale or on the keyboard. I'm going to go to F. And similarly, I'm on a white note, and then a half step above it is just the next key directly above it. So that in this case also is another black key, and that is a half step. Now, it doesn't always have to be a white to a black key. Let's find this pitch right here is B. And if I go a half step above that, it's directly, the note or directly above it is actually another white key. So there, it doesn't have to be like that white black relationship. It's, the next key directly is a white key. So that again would be a half step. So you can see how close those pitches are. So as we look at this scale, now we're going to look at the relationship between the other pitches, the ones that are a little bit more spaced apart. So the space between do to re is what we call a whole step. Another whole step that you can easily see is from so to la. What other whole steps do you see when you look at the scale? Hopefully you saw one here between re to mi would be the directly next one. Then we have our half step between mi to fa. Another whole step between fa to so. We already noticed the so to la. And then la to ti is a whole step, and then ti to do is that half step relationship again. Let's look at it on the keyboard again for just a little bit more clarification so we can see the distance. I'm going to start back on C again. Now remember, a half step, we went from this pitch to the one directly above it. That was a half step. In order to be a whole step, it's basically made up of two half steps. So I'm going to go a half step up and then another half step, and that equals my whole step. Let's do another example. Last time we did F. So if I'm on F here, a half step would be to the black key, and then I need to go another half step here to this next pitch, which happens to be G. That would be my whole step. So a whole step is made up of two half steps. So just kind of as we did a second ago, let's look at the relationship between each pitch. Between do to re is a whole step. We did that one. Let's just go ahead and put all these guys up here. Within any major scale, in order for it to be major, it's going to have this same pattern. No matter what note you start on, if it's a major scale, between do to re is a whole step. Between re to mi is a whole step. Mi to fa, that close, small half step. Fa to so, whole step. So to la, whole step. La to ti, whole step. And then finishing ti to do, that small half step. Let's hear what it sounds like. If this is my do, this is what a major scale would sound like. Coming down would be Next, we're going to look at the chromatic scale. Now, this is a special scale that moves literally the entire time by half step, and it's going to move across to 12 pitches. And we'll explain the 12 here in just a second. So, before, when we did our major scale, we were looking at just this center column. Now we're going to have pitches to the right as well as pitches to the left. As we ascend in the scale by half step, we are going to basically use a sharp. When we use a sharp sign, that is raising the pitch a half step. So if I have do and I put a sharp next to it, I'm going to go up to the right. That pitch is called D. And then if I have re, but I put a sharp next to it, it is re. A half step above re would be mi. And we already know there's a half step between mi and fa. A half step above fa would be fi. Half step above fi would be so. If I put a sharp next to so, it would be si. And then I'm up to la. A half step above la would be li. And then ti, and then a half step up would be do. This is what an ascending chromatic scale sounds like. Okay, let's look at it going down. We ascend using sharps, and then we descend the scale using flats. So if I'm at the top at do, I know I'm at a half step between do to ti. And if I go a half step lower by putting a flat, that is ta. And then I'm back at la. Half step down would be lo. Half step down is so. And there's an L missing, sorry about that. A half step lower is sa. Half step lower is fa. And then we know there's already a half step between fa and mi. Mi with a flat is called ma. Half step lower is re. And then re with a flat is ra. And then we finish at do. So here's descending. Here's what it sounds like. You might recognize that when we do warm-ups, we move typically up by half step. So if this was my warm-up, then I move up by half step, then I'm here. Moving up by half step. So you're used to actually singing in that chromatic style. We're not always cognizant of that's what we're actually doing. So let's hear that difference again between the major scale, which is this middle column, and the chromatic scale. So here's my major. Okay. And then our chromatic, again, where we kind of jet back and forth on the way up, and then we go back and forth on the way down. You'll notice that technically, this is kind of getting a little crazy here, but D and Ra are actually the same pitch. We just give them different names depending on if there's a sharp next to it or if there's a flat next to it. And those are called enharmonic notes. And that's probably a topic for another day, but for some of you, you might recognize that when you hear it especially. So here's our chromatic scale. Going down. And when we get the idea for the fact that it's 12 pitches, if we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We don't count the do again because it's essentially the same as down there.